I have not been told. In fact, he's refused to tell me which is the most stinky. We just pray that this has maybe like a little bit more of a toned down version. It's frequently compared to garbage, to rotten eggs, and even, well, you'll see. Not for the faint of heart. But here's the thing. Not all stinky tofu is created equal. No. Some of it's actually quite palatable. But in Taiwan, this stuff has a cult following. And people will go to some pretty extreme lengths to really push those limits. It creates smells so intense that it's frequently banned from public places. And well, this stuff, it's taken down some of the giants of the food industry.
I can't do it.
So in this episode, we're setting out to find Taiwan's stinkiest tofu. We start out with the basics. How's this stuff made? And then we ramp things up, hitting up notorious vendors all over Taiwan. And finally, we're hunting down a super fermented secret mountain tofu so outrageously smelly, it was quite literally banned from the streets of Taipei.
So they used to actually open the shop in the city area. So people saying that they're so stinky, they have to move to the mountain area over here, out of nowhere.
Alright guys, here's the thing. Tofu obviously does not start out stinky. First, you gotta make the tofu. And here in Taiwan, they do it just like this. We kick things off with something that looks like a giant juicer on steroids. It's just working through piles and piles of soybeans. It's all about separating the good stuff, the soy milk, from the scraps. Guys, it is kind of crazy to me just how much milk is coming out of this tiny little machine. I've seen stuff like coconut milk produced before. They need these giant hydraulic presses to get anywhere near this amount of milk. It is crazy. The leftover husks are given a quick rinse before they're sent back in for the final showdown with the juicer. We're gonna get out every last drop of milk from this soybean. From here, the soy milk gets boiled. As it stands, the tofu itself is kind of this gooey, lumpy liquid. It looks nothing like the kind of tofu that we're gonna originally end up with, or what I think you, or at least I, associate with tofu, being those sort of semi-solid cubes. Once boiled, the milk becomes a curd of sorts, and it's now firm enough to handle. It gets packed into these squarish molds that are lined with cheesecloth, and it sets the stage for their final shape. And just when it seems complete, we start adding bricks on top. Pressure and gravity, they do their part to seal the deal. It's crazy how quick this is working. You can just see all of the water just oozing out of this cheesecloth, this press, this sort of 6 or 7 stacks of bricks, and we're getting damn close to, I think, that semi-solidified tofu in, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes. It does not take long. Once the perfect amount of water has been pressed out, the molds are then flipped. The cheesecloth is peeled back, and there it is. A steaming solid block of tofu, fresh and full of potential. This tofu is sold in like huge chunks. I thought it would be like maybe smaller bite-sized pieces. What do I know? Anyway, fresh steaming tofu made here in the market. Whole process, maybe 40 minutes. Obviously this one has no stinky flavor, not yet. Man, that looks like surprisingly good. Let's go. Yeah, I mean, what do I want to say? It's that tofu-y flavor. It's that clean, neutral soybean taste.
Yes, soybean taste.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, nothing funky going on yet. I think this is the vehicle with which many Asian flavors then take place. And the flavor we're after today is, of course, the stink. To start chasing down that unmistakable funk, we head straight to Chunhua, a place where the air is thick with tradition and where I'm about to get my first taste of the real deal. I've got to be honest, it smells kind of good, not all that stinky. Maybe it is a good initial step into the world of stinkiness. Let's give it a try. Looks pretty damn good. This place is a modest roadside setup, a husband and wife duo hustling out of a food truck. Beside them are 2 massive vats of oil bubbling furiously, ready to deep fry fermented tofu bricks into a golden perfection. Once done, the tofu gets boxed, smothered in pickled cabbage, and absolutely drowned in sauce. Alright, Leo has introduced me to this Shoto stinky tofu. It seems incredibly popular. Come on. Get a look at that. It does have like a little bit of funk, but you're right. I think that this is like lightly fermented. I think this is entirely edible. I have full confidence that I'm gonna like this. Crispy, pretty good. I don't even really taste so much funk. If anything, kind of tastes like mushroom.
Yes. And when we eat it with like the cabbage, just to actually like fresh your mouth a little bit. Yes.
A little bit of cabbage. All right, that is really good, sensational, but not hardcore enough for me. We're gonna try and ramp this up and find far more stinky tofu. Let's go.
Not far down the road, we stumble upon a classic rural night market.
Oh, well, how cool is fair food? Fair food's just so interesting. We have descended on some rural Taiwanese night market in search of stinky tofu. I am not built for this weather, I'm telling you, I'm freezing my balls off. But we will see what we find.
A little bit of everything's on offer here, from gene repair to carnival-style games. But the real star of the show here is the stinky tofu.
Soup with stinky tofu. Okay, so actually another way to cook the stinky tofu in. Like people, when they cook it, they usually cook it with duck blood and then make the soup really spicy.
They have this crazy extractor fan though that is over the deep fried tofu, and man, I'm telling you, when that thing gets whizzing, that stink, that really flies. That flies everywhere. This stuff definitely has some pungent smell coming out of it, but I'm freezing my ass off, and it is steaming hot. And I think maybe that's got something to do with this. Why would you eat stinky tofu and duck blood? Well, if you're this cold in Taiwan, perhaps what you are after is this kind of warmth that is also coming out from this bowl. Because I'm telling you, I could eat just about anything that is warm right now. So, I'm gonna get some of this sauce. Man, this is way more pungent than what we had just a minute earlier. Oh yeah, wow. Yeah, that has way more kick to it. It's spicy, this one, and yeah, I mean, I think it's the sauce. You get that blood cake flavor coming through. In fact, I think if there's any flavor here, it's from that blood cake. That is just, man, that is really unique. I'm not sure that I would really be down with that in other situations, but I'm just so cold. I think that this is maybe edible. So far, I gotta tell you guys, I'm a fan of the deep fried version and maybe not this. Okay.
When stinky tofu doesn't hit hard enough, you track down its kind of wilder sibling, hairy tofu. Here in Taichung, at factories, slabs of tofu are exposed and left to ferment in the open air. They quickly develop a thick, velvety coat of white mold.
Now. Okay. Okay, let's see. Man, I think we're jumping right in, huh? Oh, wow.
这是发酵啊，
在这边发酵，在这间里面发
对
酵。
对对对对，
Also, they,
好
this
几
is
间呢，
the-
我有4间。
This is a room for fermentations. They have like 4 different rooms for, like 4 rooms for fermentations. So yes.
So what we have here is kind of like a cold room where they've kept things like a little bit chilled. I wouldn't say this is a freezer, but it's definitely fridge level. And in here we have an entire tray, bamboo tray of tofu that has grown this kind of like thick burr on it. Take one?
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. I've been told that I can grab one. Wow, it's like way harder than I thought. It almost feels like cheese or something. Like I thought it would be soft like the other tofus that I've come across. That is wild, just this like really, really furry mass. There's as much fur mold on that as there is tofu. It has it's not like a pungent flavor. It's just imparted like some kind of slight aromatics.
Making hairy tofu is a mix of precision and controlled chaos. It starts with these big slabs sliced into perfect squares and taken to a kind of cultivation room.
All right, so this tofu is not going to just be let to grow any old random mold. We need to apply a specific type of, I don't know, fungus, bacteria to the top of it. Let's see how that goes down.
The place here feels a bit more like a science lab than a kitchen. Each tofu square is neatly spaced on a bamboo rack.
She's here for 20 years already.
20 years? Wow. That's why.
Guys, that is what 20 years of tofu spacing experience looks like. Accurate.
And a tray from the last batch of tofu is brushed clean, sending a fine rain of mold spores onto the fresh blocks below.
That's kind of crazy. I don't know why I assumed that the bacteria would come from some like lab jar, something like that. But no, they just use a previous tray from an already fermented tofu and brush that dust off onto the next batch. Makes sense, right?
This fresh batch is then left to ferment in a cold room for up to a week, where it develops that thick coat of mold.
Guys, that is a lot of hairy tofu. There's no smell to it at all, actually.
When the tofu is ready, it is absolutely covered in a thick layer of the good stuff. It gets scrubbed together by hand, an oddly satisfying process that makes the mold kind of vanish, like some kind of culinary magic.
The fungus is not so much removed as it is just kind of like broken up in with the tofu so that when it gets cement mixed, it's gonna be mixed in with the chili. You are still very much eating that fungus, that funk that is gonna come with it. That's part of the flavor. That's the attraction.
From there, the blocks are tossed into a giant mixer, along with generous heapings of chili powder that gets added.
All right, so this tiny little, like almost mini cement mixer is used to apply the chilies to the already deferred tofu.
The tofu tumbles for several minutes, finally emerging as a sort of fiery red, evenly coated tofu, ready for the next step. This is where the pace kind of picks up. Workers armed with chopsticks and lightning fast hands stack tofu chunks into jars with an almost impossible precision and speed. The jars are then moved to a jarring room where brine is poured in, sometimes with a little bit of extra splash for good luck, and the lids are spun tight. And just like that, another batch of hairy, fiery, funky, and oddly kind of beautiful tofu is ready to take on the world. This place is a family-run operation, and Mama Wang isn't about to let me leave without diving into the deepest of hairy tofu experiences.
Time to try a little bit of this tofu. They've been kind enough to set up this little cute meal for me in the corner of this office. Moment of truth, the magic ingredient.
那个铁盖呢要敲敲，来，我手无烂。
Here we go, my first ever spicy hairy tofu. Let's see what it's like. Wow, so it's got like this incredibly creamy texture. I was not expecting that at all. It's like almost like a cream cheese, silky. That's not the normal mushy tofu, that is for sure. It's also a lot squishier than it sort of looked previously. That spice is coming in now, and there is a definite funk there underlying all of it. That is an absolute ton of flavor and a pretty incredible texture. Again, the closest thing to this is maybe like cream cheese spread, perfectly smooth, incredible.
She's putting it on everything. Seriously, she's piling it on dish after dish. Most of these dishes, I'm sure, are going to hit the cutting room floor because honestly, we'd be here all day. But trust me, it is a lineup worth savoring. This ingredient, this is worth getting your hands on.
So as it cooks away, you get a little bit of that smell. Again, it's just kind of like an underlying funk. That's around about it. I don't know that I would call this overly smelly. Alright guys, this apparently is the most typical way to eat the hairy tofu. It is kind of like mashed up into a paste and then you grill it with cabbage and carrots. There's some garlic in there as well. We have a side of more of the hairy tofu. Again, it has, to me, a blue cheese-esque kind of smell to it. I think it almost has like a spicy mushroom-like flavor, at least to me. It's really good. That's a great way to eat cabbage. I'm telling you, here's the issue. I love that family. I love this factory. It was kind of incredible, but it was too good. Just ain't that stinky. It's not enough of a challenge. It's time to ramp things up. So what's the big deal about some tofu that's a little bit stinky anyway? I know that's probably what you're thinking. You're like, look, I've had blue cheese, I've had truffles, maybe not real truffles, but that kind of fake oil stuff that they put on pizzas. And it's not that bad. And while the sort of lighter variations of stinky tofu are sort of within that realm, the Taiwanese really take things to another level. There seems to be no bounds with which some of the more avant-garde producers will go to truly produce some rather gut-churning smells from their tofu. Hell, there's been scandals. People put meat, dead fish, and some of the techniques used are, they're illegal. Straight up.
Health authorities warn against trying to prepare the delicacy at home due to the risk of contamination by dangerous microorganisms. They also warn against purchasing hairy tofu from unknown sources.
We're talking industrial chemicals, feces. Yeah, it got pretty extreme at some points. The thing is, Taiwan has sort of bona fide pilgrims who travel all around the country in search of the stinkiest of tofus. And none of these scandals of the past have sort of done anything to dampen that thirst, that insatiable need for the stinkiest of stinky tofus.
I can't do it.
Oh, how's that stinky tofu treating you?
Our final stinky tofu spot is not your typical roadside stall. Hidden high in the mountains outside of Taipei, it's a place known for its legendary funk and its quirks. All right, Leo, what is the sign?
Okay, so this is the sign of the stinky tofu. And this stinky tofu is especially inside the mountain area. So they used to actually open the shop in the city area. So people saying that they're so stinky, they have to move to the mountain area over here, out of nowhere. So let's give it a try whether it's stinky enough for you. Yes.
We have, up until this point, failed to find tofu that is truly that stinky. So we have driven out into the mountains here where hopefully, we are finding some stuff that is so petrifyingly stinky that they've had to move out of the city. Let's see what it's like. What are all these signs?
So basically all the signs basically saying that, okay, if no one's here, make sure you scream out my name and I will be out here. So basically, yes.
Hello.
So this is the among all three, this is the stinkiest set.
Okay.
So we will order the stinky set over here, like the stinkiest set over here.
Of course.
Okay. So 我们点一个升级版的。
There are stinky tofu super fans, pilgrims who have come all the way here just to try this. I got one whiff of that door opening and I have got to admit, yeah, I think we've come to the right place. This might be decently challenging. This place seems like it's kind of daring you to just even try and keep up. Out back, the kitchen hums along quietly, and the tofu is fermenting in brine. Man, I've got to admit this whole place is kind of interesting. It's kind of like this semi-dilapidated cookery in the middle of the Taiwanese mountains. There's a rather industrial kitchen back here, a few fridges, massive amounts of extractor fans, which I think is probably necessary. We've fired up this big steamer, we've got gas in the corner, another deep fryer on this side, and I think that we're about to have some of the stinkiest tofu that Taiwan has to offer. So guys, in each of these large plastic containers behind us is a different stage of tofu at a different level of funk. We're going to be doing a little bit of a set that comprises a few different styles, and of course, we're going to end with the absolute peak, this tofu that is fermenting in the corner in a sort of like gray primordial ooze type substance. Oh, wow. What? Oh my God. Oh my gosh, this wow, dude, we were looking at the wrong stuff. Oh my God, that's crazy.
哦，这已经发酵过了，
发酵多久？
这它是要被当姜啊。
Oh, this is like fermented for two days.
2 days only. And then as we go along, wow.
So this is around 3 to 4 days.
Wow, even after 3 to 4 days, it's pretty seriously altered.
No, the white stuff is the bacteria.
Oh, bacteria. Wow.
Some of the older bricks here have basically dissolved into pure mush, a testament to just how far they're willing to push the process.
So below the fermentation table is these brine buckets. This is what gives it its special flavor. It's kind of a mix of Chinese herbs, vegetables, maybe some salt, some water, and the bacteria lives within these giant barrels that just line this entire facility. How old is this brine? Does he remake it each time or does he reuse it?
对啊，这样讲讲一家子啊，
一甲子 more than 60 years.
Say that again?
More than 60 years.
10年老路就是安尼。
60.
Yes. They will actually keep some portion with the brine. So like actually they actually make the new brine and actually mix it together with the old brine.
这袂差吧？你来看这价格拢钱的，咱哪会啥物差？
So it's actually not smelly at all. Okay, this brine is not smelly at all.
物件袂恶臭。
Okay.
它是天然发酵。
So like only if you started to contact with the tofu and then you mix it together and with the air inside, they will actually start the fermentation process. Yes.
I'm gonna verify this. It's true, it's not that smelly.
Today, we're going to be preparing 2 dishes. The deep fried tofu we've met and tried before, and a steamed version that feels more like a serious challenge. Because, let's face it, deep fried is easy. Steamed stinky tofu, that's a whole different ballgame.
Here we go, the final boss, the final level of stinky tofu up here in the mountains, hidden away from the rest of Taipei, banned perhaps from the city, in fact. And I've got to admit that that smell that's coming off this is pretty intimidating. I have not been told. In fact, he's refused to tell me which is the most stinky. I think I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna go for this deep fried one first. I've eaten deep fried stinky tofu before, and in my mind, it's just like, that's got to be the least intimidating. You deep fry anything, it's got to make it easier, right? At least that's what I'm hoping. I don't know if this is the stinkiest or the least stinky. We're gonna find out together. Oh, I think, oh my God. Oh, I think I went right for the rough stuff. That is crazy. The texture is completely different. It kind of has, I mean, other than the crispy shell on the outside, it just mushes apart in your mouth. I think thank God for the chilies, for this kind of like spicy Thai sauce on the outside. You do get that, you get almost like a sweet, spicy flavor from it. And then there is just this incredibly sulfury, pooey aftertaste. It's kind of like a gray, gelatinous mess. This is tough. Oh yeah. You know, whenever I eat these kind of challenging things, I try to really put myself in the mind of the people that built this into their culture to see what it is. There's a reason that people eat this stuff. That's kind of tough. I'm gonna work my way down this plate real quick, just in case I did not, in fact, eat the craziest one right away. Let's go for something that's like halfway down. We just pray that this has maybe like a little bit more of a toned down version. Right. I think that's more in my wheelhouse. That's still challenging, maybe. That still has a lot of whiff to it. I don't know that this is really as much in my wheelhouse as perhaps one of the first stinky tofus that I tried at that sort of street side truck. But at this point, this dish has got a bunch of the sauce, the water that's kind of like oozed out into the bottom of it. I think that the stink has kind of coagulated together. I don't know that it really matters what you're choosing. It's all gonna have a fair amount of stink. I think there's one final boss here, and that is the kind of steamed tofu. Steamed tofu inherently has to be worse, has to be harder than deep fried stinky tofu. Hell, I've eaten deep fried pug, and the fact that that was deep fried made it much easier to eat than the adobo version. So let's go for the mushy stuff. So this stinky tofu was just straight up steamed. It has, I mean, if there was any structure there to begin with, it's kind of vanished. They look like deflated balloons, pillows without enough stuffing in them. They have that off gray color to them. There seems to be a little bit more of a savory topping. I'm definitely losing my ability to smell it quite as much, just being in this environment for so long. Maybe that's gonna help. Oh, yeah, it's much more challenging because there's something about something that smells so kind of, again, for the lack of a better word, a little bit pooey, and just having it being so soft and kind of just gelatinous in your mouth. It's not the ideal texture. It's really not. I think that deep fried, which apparently is the usual preparation, that's maybe the way to go. I don't think it's really all that well suited to steaming. Oh, that's tough. That's really tough. I'm gonna take one more bite out of these other ones just to make sure that I'm capturing the right one. Once again, he didn't really tell us which of these stinky tofus was the most fermented. It's sort of up to me to guess, sort of up to me to experience. So there's a little bit of apprehension with each bite. All right, okay. All right, I wanna make sure I try at least a little bit of all 4 of these just to ensure that I have had the stinkiest of them for sure. The things I do for you guys. All right. I don't know. At this point, it all kind of tastes the same, I'm not gonna lie. It's probably lying in its own juice. This one is a little bit firmer, quite clearly. I could feel the different texture as soon as I put the spoon through it. Maybe that makes me optimistic that it is less fermented, less sort of fall apart. I can see why some people would get into it. It's just that, for most people, I would stay at level 1. One more. Oh, what is that? Oh yeah, and then maybe that's another really fermented one. I don't even know anymore. It's like a mystery box full of absolute craziness. Anyway, there you go guys. Some of Taiwan's stinkiest tofu up here in the mountains of Keelong. Not for the faint of heart. There you have it guys, that is it for Stinky Tofu. If you enjoyed this episode, you might also like my episode on Pug Pug in the Philippines. Also kind of like a very mentally challenging dish. And out of some pretty extreme conditions. Check it out.